Well, it's time on the programme now for a little culture, and we are starting with an exhibition here in Paris. Olivia Salazar-Winspear is going to tell us about it. Now, Olivia, this is showcasing art that some 80 years ago was considered dangerous and insulting.
Yes, indeed. The famous degenerate art of the Nazi era, where the avant-garde art of the 1930s, it was a very modern time, so offended the Nazi authorities that they sought to discredit it. They said that it had no artistic skill whatsoever, and they actually thought that it was a threat to what they referred to as Aryan purity. So in 1937, they organised a large exhibition with one purpose, and that was to discredit this art, to convince visitors that it was actually worthless and not worth looking at. The show included work by figures like Marc Chagall, Otto, Paul Klee, Piet Mondrian and Pablo Picasso, people that we now considered masters of modern art. So almost 8 decades later, the Picasso Museum here in Paris has decided to recreate that exhibition, and it's called Degenerate Art, Modern Art on Trial Under the Nazis. And that subtitle is quite interesting because it really flags up what was so problematic for the Nazis, and that was the modernity, really. The fact that there was an absence of religion in these paintings, or there were people painting from other religions, Jewish painters, for example, a different perspective on women, and all of this was not really acceptable for them, because following that event in 1937, Joseph Goebbels, the Minister for Propaganda under the Reich at the time, ensured that all the German museums were scoured for examples of this degenerate art, and tens of thousands of pieces were withdrawn. Some of them were even sold or destroyed. Luckily, a lot of it survived long enough for more enlightened views to prevail, to be considered for its full worth. And you can see a lot of those examples here in Paris right now in that show.
Okay, sounds super interesting, Olivia. Let's talk, though, about another story of artistic censorship, literary this time, and it's one that's happening right now.
Yeah, it's happening right now in the United States. A number of children's books have been pulled from public schools serving the children of US military staff or civil defense employees. One of the books affected, I was quite surprised to read, is called Freckleface Strawberry, and the reason it's made headlines is the author is no other than Julianne Moore, better known as an actress than a children's author. She said that it was a great shock to learn that her book had been pulled from the shelves. This comes following an executive order from President Trump to review books, so suspend them temporarily while they're being reviewed, with content related to gender or discriminatory equity ideology topics. So I think we can break that down as books that discuss or defend equality. Other books being reviewed for compliance are The Kite Runner by Afghan author Khaled Hosseini, No Truth Without Ruth, which is a book about the second woman to serve as Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I'm not sure what's so ideological about a book featuring freckles or normalising freckles, because that's the main idea in Julianne Moore's book, that a little girl learns to live with her freckles. But the actress and author has said that she's particularly saddened by this news because she herself was in a US military school. Her father was stationed in Germany when she was a child. And of course, she never thought that she would see this happen in a country where freedom of speech and expression is a constitutional right.
Yeah, that is extraordinary, some of those books that are on the list, possibly to not meet those compliance rules, Olivia. Finally, though, from you, something quite different. The filmmaker and the actress Ariane Labed has been here in the studio at France 24 because she's talking about her first feature-length film.
You might recognise Franco-Greek actress Ariane Labed from appearances in the Greek film Attenberg, or Yorgos Lanthimos' The Lobster, or in Before Midnight. She's often made quite quirky choices as an actress, so I wasn't surprised when she chose to adapt this book. It's Daisy Johnson's dark novel Sisters, which explores an uncanny, unhealthy and slightly surreal relationship between two sisters, is set in Britain. The film is actually called September Says because the two sisters are called September and July. And here's more from Ariane telling France 24's Eve Jackson about why she wanted to explore their very specific dynamic.
I think that every family has a language somehow, and I wanted to work on that with the actors to find how these two young girls cope with the world, because at school, in high school, we can see that they're not the cool kids, or they're not really welcome. They're actually bullied, so they have to create their own safe world. And doing that, they actually create almost a language, a body language, some sounds, some things that I think every family does. So the starting point was really trying to find something physical in that language, and to try to find games. There are many games in the film which I think are great tools in order to play with something light that can become, if we push it a little bit, very dangerous.
September says dance. September says you have to last as long as possible without laughing. September says if I die, will you die too? Yes.
And given her platform in the arts, Labed has been a great defender of women in the film industry. She's a strident voice in the growing Me Too movement here in France, and she often talks about how having more women in directorial roles can and should change the culture. So you can check out the full interview with her here on France 24 at 5:15 Paris time, and that's also on our website. Definitely worth a watch.
All right, thanks very much for coming in, Olivia